I'd like to call to order the City of Norco City Council Financing Authority and regular meeting agenda for Wednesday, November 6th, 2019. The clerk will call the roll.
Something to add?
Councilmember Newton? Here. Councilmember Hoffman? Here. Councilmember Bash? And Mayor Grunmeyer?
Here.
We have Mayor Pro Tem Bowen is absent this evening.
Okay.
And first order of business, if I can solicit your votes, I need to add to the closed session agenda the Lake Norconian Club Foundation versus California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, civil case number A154917. We need to take an action or not prior to the next meeting.
It's been properly moved and seconded to add the item requested by the city attorney to the closed session agenda.
I'll call the vote. Councilmember Newton?
Yes.
Councilmember Bash?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoffman?
Yes.
Mayor Grunmeyer?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimous.
All right, at this time we will recess to closed session to consider the items on the agenda. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to reconvene this meeting of the City of Norco City Council and Financing Authority for Wednesday, November 6, 2019 at 7:00 p.m. At this time, we're going to have a report of actions taken in closed session from our city attorney. In a moment.
Yeah, normally it would have been simple. We added, the City Council added, in addition to the items listed on the agenda, the Lake Norconian Club Foundation versus California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, case number A154917, which is current litigation, and petition has been filed by the plaintiff with this, to ask the Supreme Court to take the case, and we discuss it in closed session. Otherwise, we discuss the matters which are listed on the agenda.
All right, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time we're going to have our Pledge of Allegiance and Invocation. If you could remain standing for both. Our Pledge of Allegiance this evening will be led by Councilmember Hoffman.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, we will have our invocation from Sister Lisa Mata from the Church of Latter-day Saints.
Heavenly Father, we thank Thee for the opportunity to meet here tonight as members of this community. We thank Thee for the freedom to do so. We are grateful for this city, and we thank Thee for the concern of those gathered for its well-being. We pray for the council members and their families, and we also ask Thee to bless those here tonight that have heavy burdens to carry, that they may be strengthened. We ask Thee, Heavenly Father, to let Thy Spirit watch over us. Bless our soldiers and our law enforcement. Please bless those with responsibility over this city with the inspiration needed to keep us safe, and bless them that they will work together and be prepared for the challenges that lie ahead. We thank Thee for the good people that contribute and participate in this process. Please bless this meeting, that there will be a spirit of cooperation and kindness. We ask these things in the name of Thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you very much. All right, at this time we are going to have a legislative update from our Assemblywoman Sabrina Cervantes' office with Louisa.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor Grunmeyer and honorable City Council members, and greetings from Assemblymember Cervantes. The Assembly member wanted me to provide you with this legislative update. As you may or may not know, the legislature convened on mid-September, and at that time, since that time, the Assembly member has had 9 of her 10 bills signed into law by the governor. 7 are 2-year bills, which are currently in the Senate as they're being reviewed for appropriations and other issues. This is a great time of year to make your legislative ideas known to your electeds and your budget requests. We also wanted to highlight one of those 9 bills that was passed. It's AB 201. It's a Text Message Disclose Act, which requires that political text messages must identify who is sending the text and who is paying for the text message, which basically is applying the requirements of the Political Reform Act of 1974 covering mass mailings. So what used to just cover paper mailings now applies to text messages. We wanted to tell you about a couple of events, some of which are taking place right here in Norco. On the 12th of November, we're doing a senior tablet training at your senior center. That event is in partnership with Senator Roth's office, and it's an opportunity for seniors to learn the basics of using a tablet. It's a very popular event with seniors. We've done this in La Sierra neighborhood of Riverside and Corona. On November 21st, we're doing a Veterans Recognition Program at Camp Anza in Riverside in partnership with Senator Roth's office and Assemblymember Jose Medina. That will be an event to recognize veterans. There are nominations being taken up until the 10th, and those can be sent to Alti Holcomb at Senator Roth's office. I've provided flyers outside on your table with that contact information about the who, what, where, when, and the address. Grant Gauchi, he's director of Riverside County Veterans Services Office, is leading the selection committee on that choice of a veteran. They will be reviewing the nominees. And other than that, that's all I have to report at this time. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for coming and keeping us updated.
Thank you.
All right, so the next item of business is a presentation on the Hamner Avenue Bridge update from the County of Riverside Department of Transportation with Caesar.
Good evening, council members. My name is Cesar Tolentino. I'm from the County of Riverside Transportation Department, and I'm here to update you guys on the Hamner on the Hamner Avenue Bridge project, bridge replacement. I'm going to be providing you a quick overview of the project. Also, I'm going to be providing you an update on the project and an updated cost of the project. The existing Hamner Avenue project pretty much is the width of the bridge is 36 feet. It has one lane in each direction, and it has a narrow bridge on the east side of the bridge. Currently, there's about 29,000 vehicles that commute through this segment of the road of Hamner. It is projected that 40,000 vehicles are going to be using this segment of Hamner Avenue by 2045. This bridge is 80 years old, is structurally deficient, is susceptible to flooding during heavy storms. Back in December 2010, this bridge actually got flooded, and the Santa Ana River nearly got to the bottom of the bridge itself. Because the bridge is structurally deficient and susceptible to flooding, City of Norco and the County of Riverside were able to get federal funds through the Highway Bridge Program. This federal funds has a local component, and City of Norco and the County of Riverside was able to get SB 132 funds allocated to this project. As part of this replacement project, we're going to also be widening Hamner Road from Detroit Street to Citrus Street. The existing bridge is currently is 676 feet long, is 36 feet wide, and it's 2 lanes. The proposed bridge is going to be 1,200 feet long. It's going to be 100 feet wide. It's going to be 6 lanes. It's going to be state-of-the-art bridge, and once it's constructed, it's pretty much just going to be designed to the latest standards, the latest seismic standards, the latest hydraulic standards for the area, and also it's going to have a multi-purpose trail. Here's a cross-section. As you can see, there's going to be 6 lanes on the bridge. There's going to be a center median, concrete median, and on the east side of the bridge, there's going to be a multi-purpose trail. Here's a rendering of how the multi-purpose trail is going to look like on the bridge. Here's a rendering from the river, how the bridge is going to look like. We are going to be putting some decorated lighting, street lighting out there also. This bridge is going to be also raised by 28 feet from the existing bridge. The approaching road is also going to be 6 lanes, and we're going to be adding a sidewalk on the east side of the roadway. To accommodate the roadway widening, we had to design a retaining wall. And in the retaining wall, we're going to be putting some nice aesthetics, some galloping horses and some carriages. In constructing this project, there was actually in designing this project, we had different challenges that we had to look into it. We had to maintain this segment of Hamner open at all times, maintain traffic. Because of the SB 132 deadline, we had to minimize our impacts, our environmental impacts. We had to minimize our right-of-way takes. We don't have no right-of-way takes with this project. And we also were able to minimize the utility impacts out there. We have completed the environmental document back in February 2019. We're currently getting the environmental permits. That's anticipated being completed by January 2020. We're acquiring all temporary construction easements. By March of 2020, we should have all those temporary construction easements. We're finalizing the utility coordination. We should have that completed by April 2020. When we should be finalizing the plans also by May of 2020. And we anticipate starting construction by July of 2021. As you can see, this is the overall schedule. We started back in 2017. We're going to have final design pretty much completed by May of 2020. And we're going to start construction by 2021. And we need to finish construction by June of 2023. The project, the total cost of the project is $7.6 million. 8.53% is coming from federal funds from the HPP program, and the local match is 11.47, and that's all SB 132 and some TUMF money. And for that, I'll open up for any questions if you guys have.
Does council have any questions?
I just have one clarification.
Yes.
Thank you very much for that report. So it's June of 2023. It has to be done, not January 2023. I'm just because I heard 2 different things.
We have to invoice all the invoices have to be in by June of 2023.
Okay, so it's not January.
So we anticipate, if all goes right, the bridge should be completed by the beginning of 2023.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions? Greg?
Short one. Good evening.
Good evening.
On the River Road Bridge, when that was completed, and right. I'm just trying to compare the different lengths, that was a 14-month project, construction of the River Road Bridge.
I was not involved in that project.
Oh, okay.
But my understanding, it was also a 2-year project. The reason why is working in the river is very difficult because of the elements, and generally speaking, the false work and all that goes into it. 2 years is actually a very fast to get something done in the river, like a bridge completed in the river.
Well, this is what I was wondering, but it was a 14-month construction project, and it was completed in 14 months. Do you see in your 2-year schedule that could be accelerated?
Right now, we're pretty much pushing our limits with the length of the bridge itself. Yes, 2 years is actually, typically a bridge like this will be probably a year and a half project pretty much. Okay. But 2 years, we're pushing. We're struggling, but we're going to get it done. It's going to be tough. It's going to be very tough.
Kevin?
Can we get this put online on the front of our website?
Yeah, we can.
Great. Yeah, thank you.
And we actually are working on a flyover too, and then we're going to be providing it to the city probably sometime by December or so.
Yeah, I get a lot of questions. And,
Okay, perfect.
Andy, I have to hand it to you and to Beth Groves and Brian and all the people that helped make this happen.
And also, we actually have some public, in our website for the county, we have an actual web page for the project itself. So I could give you guys the web link on that.
Yeah, the River Road Bridge started like 25 years ago, and it took that long to raise the money and stuff, and we were able to raise it, what, in 2-3 years, right? About 3 years? Once we got the initial funding?
We got some luck.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
All right, thank you very much for coming this evening.
On the clicker?
All right, at this time, we're going to proceed into City Council business items. We'll start with number 1, City Council communications and reports on regional boards and commissions. All right, Councilmember Hoffman.
Yeah, well, since we skipped the meeting in October and we'll go through all that, let's talk about where we're going to be. This weekend, Marching Through History will be at the George Ingles Equestrian Center. Has 2 days. This is more than just an event. This is a presentation of history. Starts out with what they call the ancients, from Roman warriors all the way up to our current war or current service personnel in the Middle East. So for you, those of you that want to get out and for a little history, this is the place to be this weekend. And it's a perfect weekend because not only that, but it's Veterans Day weekend, so flip to the next one. So, but please, this Monday, it's the Veterans Day event at George Ingles Veterans Memorial. We have Councilman Bash has brought us an excellent speaker, and not only that, but we have Presley Tennant singing for us. And come out and show your respect for the veterans like myself and others that have, that's why we're here. That's why we have our freedom today, because of all those guys that put the uniform on. So thank you. That's all, Mayor.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Bash.
I'll touch on just a couple of things. I went to a lot of stuff. At the League of Cities, the State League of Cities annual conference, the thing that is actually the best conference I've been to, one of the things they talked about that got me thinking, and I'd already sort of been thinking this, is the average age of Norco is 62 years old. And are millennials going to want to buy large lots and go to the expense of maintaining those large lots? We're getting a lot of mixed information on that. We have 2 leading real estate people saying they're buying the properties, but what do they want to do on those properties? And so one of the things that we're doing a lot on is trying to create farm to fork endeavors, because we already have all the infrastructure and stuff to support that. But I think that one of the things I would like to do is I would like to, when we do update our strategic plan, I would like to somehow talk to millennials. I want to talk to people who are going to be buying those homes. We are trying desperately to pass on this lifestyle. Measure GG, Norco Tour, the CPUC, the Hope, Chrisman came out, who is our area representative, and myself and Chris Barajas walked all the way we walked the entire stretch of Norco by car and by walking along the Santa Ana corridor, made her aware of the fact that Norco, because we're a patch of green surrounded by an ever-growing sea of concrete, and then into La Sierra, and then across the river into elements of Europa Valley, is extremely it's extreme fire danger. One of the things we're trying to get them to release is a letter from CAL FIRE that basically says that, but we are in a red zone. Kind of works against us because that also means they can turn off our electricity, so I hope you're all prepared for that. At the WRCOG, just to sort of add, the biggest comment that I heard, because they were talking about why they were shutting off the power at Edison, the representative WRCOG said trees and power lines are a bad mix. So we are fighting really, really hard to get this project either undergrounded, and it's just so people know, the advocate for the CPUC said this project is unnecessary. So we're fighting really, really hard, and I can honestly say this is one of those things where every council member has a stake in this and they're doing something. So I don't know how it's going to turn out, but we're pushing very, very hard. Chamber of Commerce, WRCOG PACE, next. Oh, one of the things we're forming is a united front with Europa Valley, Corona, Eastvale, maybe Chino, even though it's in a different district in Norco, because one of the things that's happening is Sacramento's kind of doing a lot of stuff that we're not real happy with, and so we're trying to figure out a way. We had our first meeting, it was myself, Joe Tassari, and the mayor of Corona. We're hoping that will expand. We can have up to 2 people coming to that. Let's see what else. Then at WRCOG and at the League of Cities, and I was just talking to Louisa, overwhelmingly AB 68 was voted for, and I don't know why that is, because at League of Cities and at WRCOG, not a single city was for building additional units in the back that you can rent out or turning your garage into a housing unit. Not one that I could find, and yet they all voted to do this, so something screwy is going on. One of the things that we were members of that was one of the great moments at the League of Cities was Ted and I were kind of on the ground floor with the support of the entire council, and a couple years ago we began to form a rural committee with the League of Cities, sort of like the coastal. It's sort of a group within the League of Cities and have a lot of power. In fact, most of them are exempt from AB 68, as is the governor's area. He doesn't have to put those things in his backyard. But when they came in, I think they thought there'd be 12, 13, 14 people there, and the entire room was packed. There were over 300 representatives from cities. So we're going to try to use the rural exchange in areas of land use, protecting our zoning. The biggest thing that people talked about at the League of Cities was the loss of local control. In essence, with AB 68, they're basically saying our codes began to be written in 1948, literally, when the county tried to put cracker boxes, and then just every council protected, protected, protected. Basically what's happening is the governor, with a stroke of a pen, erased single-family units in the city of Norco, and so we're working very, very hard to combat that, and hopefully we'll come up with some strategies. Again, it was loss of local control. And I went to so many things between then and now, but those are kind of the highlights. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
All right. Councilman Newton?
Well,
your slide
I didn't
says
quite
it all.
slack off all month, but tomorrow we do have the Chino DeSalter Board meeting, which I will be attending, and we'll report it in 2 weeks on. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
And I have nothing to report at this time. I'm just going to announce that at the end. All right, so moving on to City Council consent items. All items listed under the consent calendar are considered to be routine and may be enacted in one motion. Prior to the motion to consider any action by the council, any public comments on any of the consent items will be heard. There will be no separate action unless members of the council or the audience request specific items to be removed from the consent calendar. Items removed from the consent calendar will be considered separately under item number 3 on our agenda. So, does council have any items they request to be pulled?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to pull C, D, E, H, and P, please. And no, that's, I didn't buy a valve, okay.
Mayor? Also C, D, and G.
All right. Any other items?
Move to approve the rest.
It's been properly moved and seconded to approve the items on the consent calendar with the exception of C, D, E, G, H, and P. The clerk will take a vote.
Please vote. Vote passes unanimous.
All right, thank you very much. So we are going to move on to item number 3, which are our items that are pulled from the consent calendar. We'll start with item C, which was pulled by Councilmember Newton and Councilmember Hoffman. So,
thank you, Mayor. And this is kind of directed at both the Director of Public Works and the City Manager. And I'm reading the program here, and I have nothing against the program. The fact that we do need the power at the pump station off on Bluff. My concern goes back to the cost on this, and we're talking about $4.3 million plus for that. And then on top of that, we're allowing the city manager a 10% contingency percentage, 10%. 10%. And trust me, this is not a trust issue. This is coming back and looking out for back to the voters and the funds here. Is that's $400,000 plus. We just spent a lot of time discussing the amount of money, for $500,000 for trail fencing, but and then like I said, this is no reflection on Chad or Andy up here, but $400,000. I'm trying to understand why we blanketly always put 10% on these. And so, Chad, if you can, or Andy, if you can ask that to it. I'm not trying to stop the project. That's a lot of money, and that to ask for an extension for a 10% contingency fee when it's $400,000, unless Councilman Newton wants to have before you answer.
Yeah, I will. I'll say I had a vigorous conversation with Chad this morning on the 3 items that I pulled. And I think we worked out most of the other details. But I'm in agreement with you on just the blanket 10%. That and I agree, it's not a matter of trust. It's that the way our policy is set up right now, that we would not know of $437,000 worth of authorized change orders until the end of the project, when we're presented with a notice of completion. And that's concerning to me, and I think that we could just say pick a number, is that the city manager should absolutely have the right to authorize to a certain dollar amount, just to keep, because there's changes on every job, and to keep that job moving forward. But at a certain point, I think it's not really a control thing, but it's more of just so we're kept abreast. And one of the things I am going to put you on the spot, is that with my conversation today with Chad, is that we're going to have a $200,000 change order on this project.
No, maybe 150, but
okay.
It's as I was telling Councilman Newman, it's
Newton. It's Newton.
Newton.
Okay,
good.
Thank you.
Is that we are currently upgrading our treatment plant, and the Reservoir project and booster station is the parent to that project. And what was not designed in either of them was the connection between the two, because when we started these projects, they were started at once, but then our as separate projects designed, but our Reservoir project kind of blew up in our face when the prices became extremely high, and we didn't know if it was going to continue. So the connection piece was basically pulled out of both projects because it was an extra cost that we didn't want to put in by either contractor if we didn't know it was going to go forward. But with the redesign, so we already started the treatment plant project. With the redesign bringing the cost down significantly and pulling out a lot of components, we're now able to go forward with that. But in that redesign, it didn't include, because it was still an unknown, this basically connection portion, which is basically piping that pushes water from the treatment plant to the reservoirs and the controls related to that. We already had and why I kind of have a figure, we asked the current contractor, Cora, if they'd be willing to give us a quote to do that change order now and put that infrastructure in so it's ready for the reservoir. They originally were going to consider that, and they gave me a tentative quote of about $150,000, but then they subsequently backed out and said they didn't want to do the work. They want to just get the project done and get out. So that was something I was going to bring back to council to authorize that as an extra and explain that. If it was something we were going to move forward with as part of the treatment plant project, but it just died, unfortunately. So we'll bring it back as part of another item for this project. It just wasn't designed as part of, there was kind of an in-between gap we left out. So I just wanted to be candid with Councilman Newton that we had that expectation there's going to be something there, and it wasn't related to necessarily whether we asked for a 10% contingency or not, because it is generally a flat industry standard to do 10% because it gives you that leeway in the scale of the project. You might have other things to improve on, but it doesn't mean we can't change that contingency to some other number. It also doesn't mean that the council can't direct staff that despite the contingency level that's authorized, that any singular item that's over, let's say, $25,000 should come back to City Council for review or approval, or at least notification that something's going on. So you're not finding out at the very end, a year and a half later, that we spent $350,000 on these various things. That might be necessary and warranted, but it's keeping you informed. So certainly staff is not opposed to either idea of bringing these items back so that might be approved by the city manager on the authorization at each subsequent council meeting of what we did and why, or asking to have those items be brought back to have approval by the council. Either one makes sense. Again, we're not certainly trying to get away with something or do something improper. It's just the kind of standard practice of asking 10% to cover based off the scale of the project.
And part of our discussion this morning was also that just want to be kept in the loop on that, and part of our headbutting was also that the ink isn't dry, and we're going to be looking at a $150,000 change order right out of the gate. And I think these are the items we need to be, just to be prudent, we need to be kept abreast of.
Oh, absolutely.
So I'm okay with making a motion to approve the project, but I would just like to see a certain number in there where we at least have notification, and especially on these larger jobs. And you know, maybe
would 25,000 be acceptable as a singular item? Any singular item that we come back?
Actually, I was thinking more like $50,000. That, you know, on that type of magnitude. But pardon?
What's the language?
That any change order, well, let's say 25. Like I said, the key to all this is that you don't want to tie down your project, you don't want to tie down the city manager, and you don't have to have every dollar, you know. You need to keep moving forward. So if staff's recommending anything over $25,000, it would just be, bring it to council as either a notification or any other formality you think.
Sure.
It just, I just don't want to wait to the end and go, where'd all these come from?
No, I think your concerns are valid, warranted, and I'm okay with that. It's not going to slow me down as far as moving things and making decisions. I mean, and it's just keeping council abreast of what we're doing.
Okay.
I think that's prudent. It's a big dollar figure.
Yeah, so the 25,000 won't slow you down? I mean, you can just bring, we meet every 2 weeks anyway.
Right.
So we can have that. I mean, I was going to give you a luxury of at least anything under 100,000 or anything over 100,000 we should know about, because this is a big project, and I'm just specifically on this project. And you and I, we work with wastewater, and we worked with those things, and I mean, it's easy to get up with this project, easy to spend $50,000 just by one contractor. So I wouldn't have a problem as long as we're not going over $100,000 notification to this council. But if you want to have the 25 or I'm good with that too. I just don't want a beleaguered staff with having this come back to us all the time, especially since we know we're going to have cost overruns on this project. But just the blanket 10% just did not sell. That's over $430,000, which to me was a lot of money.
Yeah, like I said, I'm okay with coming back to council at $25,000 just to give you informational items about what we're doing and what we've approved and why, and answer the questions you may have about why we had to do that particular item.
Are you okay with that?
It's really okay.
Yes, I think I like the discussion so far.
Okay.
I like the fact that the City Council recognizes the importance of this project, which has been on the drawing board for quite some time. Yes. And there are plenty of reasons why we need to get this project done. The last thing we want to do is to do anything that will slow it down. The concept of coming back with the City Council to report change orders that exceed $25,000, whatever the number is, I think is perfectly fine.
I would take it I made a motion on that. Okay.
It's been moved and seconded to amend item 2C by changing the 10% change order to a dollar amount of $25,000 needs to come back to council. Or
that wasn't
be run by council, or council notified? Notification to council for items over $25,000.
Still the 10%, it's just we come back every time we do anything over $25,000 on an individual basis to provide notification to council.
Okay.
Still under discussion then?
Yeah, because that's not the way I
we would still have the ability to say we don't accept it or we do accept it, though.
The way he's stating it would be after he gets over his 10%, we wouldn't have that.
No.
Right?
I apologize if maybe I'm misunderstanding the discussion, is the issue isn't necessarily the 10% total amount as far as a request. It's more of, because it's $400,000, that we want to control the information about what change orders are being provided and when. And so I thought I understood it as that basically if we authorize anything that's $25,000 or more, that comes back to the council as quickly as possible, next council meeting, to provide information about what we did, what we authorized, and why. But we still have the ability, because of the 10%, to move forward, and we're not coming back each time for an approval of that amount. If you want to approve that amount each time, then we can do that also. Then I would say that you would it would probably be best to have because the problem is, let's say if I do the first 5 or 6 change orders and the total amount for 10 different things is $20,000. Those items wouldn't come to you, but and that continues to progress of small ticky-tack things, and now it's a $70,000 total. And I haven't hit an item that's 25 or more. It's a question of what's the maximum dollar amount that the city and staff has to keep the project moving, to do those miscellaneous change orders that don't trigger the 25,000 amount, so we can keep moving forward. Because at some point we'll have to get authorization for the maximum contingency we can operate within. So I think, if I can suggest, is keep the 10%, but the direction is clear that if you have any item that's over 25,000, that the council wants to be informed of what that is at the soonest possible condition. The question I have for you is, do you want it as just an informational item, or do you want to approve it at this level, which again is okay too, but I would like to at least have the amount that is available, just recognizing that you've given staff direction that any individual item 25 or over comes back for either just as informational to keep you informed, so you're not finding out at the end, or to approve it on its face as an approved item.
I'd like to keep it as approval. What do you think?
If we're going to keep it at approval, that will slow you down.
It would, yes.
Okay, and I understand what you're saying, Craig. I'm okay with the notifications on those 25, but when those add up, and I'm going to make it a little easier for you, you have a $430,000 contingency fee, but when that starts getting up over $100,000, we need to be. I mean, that gives you a little more leeway. You'll know when you're going to spend over $100,000, and that's something that this council should be aware of, and we should at least continue that approval on.
I will even make it better, and we'll report back to the city council every time we hit 50,000, 100,000, 150,000, and so on and so forth.
Okay, that's...
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So
Regardless of the amount, when we hit this trigger amount.
notify.
Yeah, we notify the city council.
And there's,
yeah.
and there's nothing which precludes the council from a year from now saying, hey, this is moving too fast, we want to see them and approve them.
Right.
Okay, so to restate, we're going to approve item 2C with the stipulation that any items over 25,000 are notified to council. Correct? Correct? 100 and 100. Yes.
Gotcha, okay.
Perfect.
Please vote. Motion passes unanimous.
All right, moving on to item 2D, which is the acceptance of proposal for professional inspection services, and this was pulled by Hoffman and Newton.
I don't have a problem with this now. I was adding the two together because C and D were related, unless Councilman Newton has another idea on it.
Yeah. So this was the second part of our discussion this morning, that going back to 2C, that we had in our CIP budget $4,800,000 for this project, and by adding in the 10% for change orders, the other 400,000, what we have to do now is have a new resolution to spend an additional $415,000 for inspection services for this project. And in order to, I kind of looked at that as another change order in a sense on this resolution, but that we will also then reduce the appropriation for the Chestnut Street Mainline project by $350,000 to prepare or to provide inspection services. And it was that this should have been part of the overall project, is kind of the way I look at it. We're taking away another capital improvement project and adding this money back. So our other part of the discussion goes all the way back until, if you remember when we were doing Hamner Avenue, and we spent $80-some thousand by hiring Will Dan to inspect that street work at night for that 3 months or whatever for that project. And at that time I had requested, and I don't know if I had all the council support on that, but was to develop a resource list of inspectors that we could either hire or contract with, and possibly look at different cost savings instead of going out to these larger companies. So in this case, it's that we haven't moved forward on this resource list, and we're going to spend $415,000 for 300 work days of inspections. And then I think what triggered me a little bit more with our conversation, that in our capital improvement budget, I think in 2 years or less, we have another large project that'll be coming up that we're going to be looking at another $400,000 in inspection costs. So in that nutshell, we're $800,000. I would think it would be more prudent to hire an employee that is qualified to inspect this type of work, and if this time isn't all going to these water projects, he could fill in inspecting some Measure R projects or different infrastructure projects, but now that we're talking $800,000 in the next 2 years, I think we could certainly hire a very qualified inspector in-house, and I think that would take us further down the road. So that was my discussion with Chad on this, and I'm open to anything on that. It was just that that our current inspection staff is I don't want to say not qualified in water works, but it maybe not be their field of expertise. But all these inspectors come with all different certifications where they could fill in on other projects too. And I'm just looking at that overall magnitude. In the next 2 years, we're going to spend $800,000 with engineering firms. You have your side of the argument, so I'll let you make that.
Well, it's not necessarily, well, I guess it is
or discussion.
Discussion.
Right. Discussion. Excuse me.
Again, traditionally, in my experience in the agencies I've been with, these type of large-scale projects, you usually go out to outside service because it's very rare that you're going to have an individual that you could hire that's going to have the full breadth of inspection knowledge and certifications, because you're dealing with structural, you're dealing with electrical, you're dealing with and I'm drawing a blank here, usually multiple disciplines. And the benefit of having an outside company provide those services at every level that's needed in this type of project is that they have multiple employees at their availability to provide as a resource. They also take the liability of they're responsible for the inspection to make sure the project gets done correctly and document how it was done. And so if there's anything that comes up after the fact that wasn't done correctly, they're actually liable for those improvements and those corrections because they certified it was done. And if it turns out it wasn't done properly and documented, they're on the hook for it. They have to have substantial amount of insurance to do this work. Individuals or an individual that you might hire, we would be on the hook for any mistakes the person made. So we would pay for any mistakes that individual might make, and it's only one person that we're hiring. And if that person's gone, who takes over? Who understands how to do the structures? Who's doing the electrical? Again, Norco's a small city. We have one inspector primarily focused on water projects, but it's pipelines, which are generic and pretty much uniform in how you deal with it. We don't have the ability to do our inspectors on the sewer lift stations, which we hired an outside contractor to do the inspection because of the necessary experience we needed for that. I don't know, because again, we haven't gone out there to look for what's out there, whether or not you get an individual that would meet all those requirements, knowing the scale of the projects we have. Or if you go to these individual companies, which again, it is our pool of companies. We've vetted and created a pool of companies that have these types of services that council pre-approved for on-call services. So the proposals we got was from the companies that we vetted. We did not look at individuals that might have their own business or retired that might be willing to come on for a short period. But certainly in these types of projects, an individual has to be full-time. They're not going to be doing other work because this is Monday through Friday, 8 hours a day, unless it gets rained out, and then really no projects occurring. There's nothing going on. So you need to have a presence there. And I'm certainly not going to assume what the financial cost might be and liabilities with hiring somebody. Like anything, you're paying for all those things beyond his salary to be here. They're going to be a PERS employee, so you're paying their health benefits, their pension benefits, etc. And your pool's going to be limited because if it's anybody that was in PERS before, can't come back because that impacts their PERS if they're retired. Certainly, if private sector, it's okay. They can come in and being in PERS doesn't impact their own individual retirement. So anything is possible, and certainly what Councilman Newton has indicated could be done. It's not common practice to do it that way. It doesn't mean you can't do it. And if we were to take that route now, we'd have to delay this project starting for, I would guess, at least 3 to 4 months, because I've got to create a spec for a job application. We've got to put it out for at least a month. We've got to do interviews, etc. And then hope, which hasn't been our best experience here, of getting somebody who's qualified. And so we can do what Councilman Newton is suggesting. I just don't know if it's an overall best interest for Norco, other than the potential dollar savings. I get that, but you pay for a peace of mind by having a company that has tremendous amount of resources to represent you for a multi-million-dollar project that you need to be done right, and it puts them on the hook to do that. So for me, there's a lot of benefit, and certainly the competency of Krieger and Stewart has been very good in the projects they've assisted us with. They're doing very well and have a very, very good advocate for us on issues with the contractor and representing us. So I do appreciate their experience and ability to do that. So I definitely feel they could do the work, but I understand the financial concerns that Councilman Newton has brought up. I just don't know how that it could be done as far as effectively in a timely manner for this to continue forward without delaying the project. I don't know if Andy has any thoughts on it.
The other thing I want to add is the issue we just talked about on change orders. I think having somebody who is experienced on site throughout the duration of this project will also help us to ensure that those change orders are controlled to a minimum. I think we need to keep that in mind. Additionally, some of the things that Chad has already talked about, we pride ourselves in the fact that we are efficient and we are to most extent a contract city. Yeah, in the short run that might cost you a little bit more, but we don't end up assuming some of the legacy costs associated with hiring full-time employees. Quite honestly, I don't know that we have $800,000 of inspection projects coming up in the next 4 years. If I was certain that is the case, we can go do that analysis and see if it makes sense to hire an employee to cover those projects. But again, part of how we've managed this city for some time now is to try to recognize our size and use contract services as much as possible.
That, well, correct me if I'm wrong, when we talked about this morning, we do have another project coming up that's going to be somewhat of this magnitude.
Yes,
in the next 2 years.
Yeah, your information is correct, because we have
that's where I was coming with the $800,000 in inspection fees. Like I said, I don't want to delay the project. This engineering firm is first class. I've worked with them. I know their abilities. It's just that I think we still need to develop this resource for maybe not major projects, but smaller ones. I mean, that little $80,000 deal still bothers me, okay? But it's a source we can go to.
No, we can certainly look at that moving forward.
And I do agree with you, Andy. I mean, that was their statement in their contract that they would minimize contract change orders. So I guess I'll ask my colleagues whatever their opinion.
If I got, Greg, and one of the things that I'm like you, I didn't want to hold this up, and you read more than this and into this than I did. The one thing, and I agree with you, and I think we've tried to do this with hiring somebody that staff, and I think the appropriate place would be to have the city manager, when we do budgets for the 2021 year, to look at that, Andy, and see where we're at for that, because this project, because of the connection with the RCRA and everything, we got to get this one done. We're gonna be out to dry on it.
The other thing is, for years we have not been doing a lot of projects, and therefore we have not actually had a chance to evaluate whether we should develop these resources of bring some full-time inspectors. So now that we know a lot of projects are coming down the pike, we need to take a different view of it.
I would take that as a compliment to Chad. I mean, in his short tenure here, he's been knocking it out. You know, you've been doing a good job. You know, you had a predecessor that could get a project done every 2 weeks, but so you still have a way to go. But
I just had a question. So, so if we hire somebody, we're going to have the unfunded liability over time. Would they be a permanent employee or full-time? We'd have their health care over time if they came to us with experience. Also, would you be able to get somebody with the current certifications that we would need? I'm concerned about that. $800,000 is a lot of money, but I do want the project to go forward because we've been sitting on it for a gazillion years. But some of the things that Greg brought up, I do have concerns. Also, if they change contract employee law, are we going to have to deal with that? All of a sudden, if it's considered something that we do as a city on the norm, how will that affect being able to hire contract employees? Those are questions that I have. I do like the idea that they would be on the hook for the mistakes as opposed to us. I think that's a good thing. Keeping change orders to the minimum, I like that. I'm not accustomed to spending this much money.
Yeah, this is a new territory for us.
This is new territory, and you know, I have to say for the people in the audience, one of the things you learn very quickly at League of Cities is that Norco is financially in really good shape right now, and so we can actually afford to do some of these improvements. But at the same time, I don't want to be spending money like a drunken sailor, and but I'm just nervous about this. So if we could move forward on figuring out if we could get an employee, but the problem is a lot of the inspections will be apples and oranges, as I understand it. So anyway, I'm waiting for a motion. I mean, I make a motion, we approve this.
Okay, it's been properly moved and seconded to approve item 2D, which is the contract for professional inspection services.
Please vote. Motion passes unanimous.
All right, we're going to move on to item 2E, which are the acceptance of bids and award a contract for the equestrian trail fence. This was pulled by Councilmember Hoffman.
And again, I met with Chad on this and we talked, and here's my feeling. This is back to the 10% again. For the two bids out of the three we received, they're very close. Yeah, 219,093 and then 222,752. If we were to add that 10% back in on contingencies, that throws that first bid up higher over than the second basic bid. And that was one thing. So I said we utilize that 10% because that's what we've always done. And I'm at a point where I think that in this case, because of the closeness of the two bids, that's one of those things that we need to reduce that amount of that 10% allowance on the change order because it is so close. And then the other thing, and Andy or John, you can answer this question to me. Since one of the bidders was a local business on the sales tax on that material, would we get, because it is that, because one is probably getting, they get a 1% less than that. I don't know what the amount would be. Is that we can't take that into consideration.
No.
I didn't think so, and that's what I'm going to.
Nope.
Yeah, but it's
there is some circumstance under which you can establish a bidder preference, but not this one.
Okay, and that's I know it's purge. So, but that was my whole thing, is that it almost bid, even though the contingencies would be the same on both the bids, but these two bids were so close that if we allow that, then it just, that's what I'm bothered about, is the closeness of it and the 10%. And if anybody else has anything on it.
Just to clarify, Councilman Hoffman, so in this case, really, the 10% contingency is for other items not known at the time of the bid that you might do. In this case, so it doesn't impact the bids, or somehow giving 10% puts it over the second bidder. The contingency would have occurred whether it was the first bidder or the second bidder, because it's not related to the bid itself. It's simply that in this case, we may determine that the amount of linear footage that we estimated was off, and we needed an extra 1,000 linear feet. And we can do that because the 10% contingency was authorized by the council and get the work completely done. So the contingency just allows us to make sure that, again, if things come up, or if there's space that, in this case, because it's linear footage and we guesstimated it's this much linear footage, which is under our total amount, because again, our total budget for this was a maximum of $250. So we had to look at what we reasonably, assuming the prices that might come in, where do we put that targeted of linear footage to coming in at a certain price so we're under the 250 so we can move forward. In this case, I think it actually works to our advantage of having contingency, because we're already awarding something at 219, 10% more, which is again the 21,000, gets us almost to 250, so we maximize the amount. So even if we were right on the linear footage, most likely I would look for other areas to put more fence in, using that contingency to maximize, try to use my entire budget to put as much trail fencing in. So this one's a little bit different in the overall, the other one was a huge amount of number and what that could lead to. This one could actually end up leading to more work being done, but it's still at the lowest price, which is the lowest bidder per square foot, per linear foot. So for us, we're always still guaranteed, even if I add more, the lowest bidder's price, because it was lower than the second bidder. So contingency is very important to do, especially in this project. There's many times we've done trail fencing where the linear footage hasn't been exact, because again, we have a formula we use. We measure the road and assume 70% and that's accounting for driveways. It's not always perfect, because we're not wheeling every single foot, because that's very time consuming. Our formulas work pretty good, but we've ended up a little bit short on others and had more linear footage on others. But that contingency is continually on the projects we've done so far. I think we've gone through 3, has been very timely and valuable to have it there.
And I appreciate that, and how you do it, and that you're looking at. It's just, in this situation, we haven't had bids this close before that only have the amount is $3,600 difference, and normally there's $4,000 and $5,000 difference in the two bids. So it's close, but this was really close, and that's what I'm just thinking about it. So unless any other member.
I'll throw in a couple of cents on that, so that if you add or deduct any footage, it will be by the quoted unit price.
Correct. Okay.
So I somewhat disagree with you in your explanation to Mr. Hoffman about on the 10% that contingency should allow us to do another $20,000 worth of linear footage. You had an add alternate in your bid for removal. You did not accept any of the add alternates for removal of existing fence, and your your third bidder was $15,000, so he's out of the picture. Your low bidder had a bid of almost $39,000 for removal. So what is the actual cost going to be for removal of existing fence, and then add that to this 219,000, and then you're already at your 250. So I'm kind of taking a little exception to that. So where are we with the removal of the fence? That was not accepted.
Well, the removal, like we did on California and the last project, was all done by court crews. So we went through, removed the fencing. So we're just paying that court cost, which I believe is $150 a day for the crew, for entire crew to work all day long.
Is this Cal Fire crew or
we use both.
The criminals?
We use both, but it's the Cal Fire. I think that's $225. I don't remember the amount, but we have both available to us to do that, so it's a much cheaper, more effective. Like when we did North Avenue, that was entirely Cal Fire. They went through and blew through that real quick and did it in basically a day. It always depends on availability, because if Cal Fire is not available, like right now, we would use the court crews to assist us to go ahead and do those removals. It'll be a little slower, but that's basically almost free.
Okay, so, but there is a cost associated to that, whether to use those and our own employees.
Right.
If we're working with the court workers, we have to do our own supervision with that.
Correct. But it's not a direct cost of the $250,000 budgeted when you're using our employees, because we don't bill against the project because we're already paid as part of the budget. So it's not, we're not billing our employee time on that project. This is already paid through their existing allocations of where they're paid out of each fund. So we're just paying for, whether it's a court crew or a Cal Fire crew, their time to be there. So it's
there's still a magnitude of cost.
There is. It's just not significant. It's probably, for us to remove the trail fencing, we have to. If just using the court crews cost themselves or the Cal Fire crews themselves, I would venture to guess it'd be less than $5,000 total. Okay. Yeah, it's not a significant cost, because especially if we are able to get Cal Fire, they're fast. They're a great crew.
No complaints about them.
Yeah. Okay. But that's the way we wanted it purposely. We asked for it. We always do. What would be your cost? Because if they can get the numbers reasonable, we'll take it. But I know we can do this far below the $38,000, so it wasn't worth spending that money.
Is there a second?
Second.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't address an item, and I want to make sure to do that before speakers. There was a protest received today from Gonzalez Fencing, Valley City's Fence, excuse me, from Dave Gonzalez, the owner, basically indicating that he was protesting the bid of the lowest bidder because it was missing a couple of signatories as far as jurats, which is the city attorney. The
notarization.
Notarization, excuse me. Thank you, Dana. And so they felt that because of that, the bid should be rejected. I reviewed that initially, didn't believe the missing notarizations were material to the overall bid as far as its cost. And also the lateness of the protest also disqualifies the protest. It should be submitted within 5 days of the original bid opening, which was on September 25th. And this was received today on November 6th. Also, you have within your packet that I gave you a response from the lowest bidder indicating similar concerns about the timeliness of the protest. And I provide the same information to the city attorney, who concurred and indicated that for those two reasons, that it's the issue identified was not material to the overall bid in awarding it, and that the protest was submitted beyond the deadline required, and was stipulated in the specifications that it didn't warrant disqualifying the lowest bidder and awarding to the second bidder. So I wanted to apologize. I want to make sure I outlined that was something we received today.
Okay, so we had a motion and a second to approve item 2E.
Please vote. Motion passes unanimous.
All right, we're going to move on to item 2G, the acceptance of bids and award of contract for the storm drain at Parmenter Park. Councilman Newton.
So my issue with this is that you and I have had this discussion on many public works projects, that when we see line items that maybe jump out, whether it's pipe bollards or we had one here a while ago on trail fencing, you know, where there was a line item on your review sheet, you know, where it's like furnish and install 4 feet of horse fence for $5,000, okay? And so we've had this discussion, and what I learned from you was that those line items in particular do not affect, you know, how you really look at it, that it's the bottom line total in those cases, however they got to that bottom line and they're the low bidder. So my issue with this is that Gentry General Engineering is the apparent low bidder by $83,000, and then he realized that he busted on a couple of items and then wrote a letter to you saying that he wants to beg off of this job because of a clerical error. All right? So what that impact is to us as, actually I know this is through Riverside County Flood Control, but it is still public funds, and we all pay property taxes that contribute to this, that by him begging off on this, it's going to impact the residents and the cost of this project by $83,000. And the issue I have is, great, you want to back out of this, you provide a 10% bid bond, and so in his case it's basically $27,000 that I think we should have, he should forfeit his bid bond, so we don't take an $83,000 hit. It's reduced by the $27,000. So that's the issue I have, is why aren't we going after this bid bond? He can call it a clerical error, and you can look at all those line items, and yeah, they're lower, but some are higher. So I'm not quite buying that one.
Right. No, and it's a good question, and we had a healthy discussion on that item too. When we originally got the request to be relieved of the bid, which was immediate, I reviewed the bids, looked at them, verified, you know, not only what everybody bid on the particular line items, he basically identified 3 line items that he made clerical errors. In my opinion, he only made one clerical error on one item, and it was significant in that it was well below the engineer's estimate, our estimate, and certainly well below what all the other bidders bid. It was basically a line item 7, I believe, for constructing a lift station. He put $10,000 down, which was not even close to what it would cost to do that. What we had to weigh is, because we get claims like this from time to time, and we had it on our treatment plant project, and that was just more of someone saying, well, I left money on the table, so I want to be relieved of my project. That's not a defensible action. When contractors use clerical error, that is kind of a broad brush, and it's very much interpretive based off the agency, and also basically if you get into a legal battle, what that means. I felt in reviewing it, based off the information, that just focusing on the one clear line item, that I felt it was a reasonable request. It was clearly a clerical error. There's no way they could have done that work for that amount. And felt it was reasonable to grant that request, because they would likely protest and that decision to take their bid bond when it was a clerical error. If we're identifying as a clerical error, again, for staff's opinion, we believe it's a reasonable assumption it was a clerical error. And therefore, we didn't feel it was prudent to go after their bid bond in this situation. And so I was weighing the reasonableness of the request, what I could see based off of what we projected that line item should be, what all the bidders did, which verified that our information was accurate, that there's no possible way this can get done. And I didn't feel that the likely litigation that would occur for going after that bid bond, it would end up costing us money. and we wouldn't likely be successful in that assertion that, no, this wasn't a clerical error, you need to forfeit your bid bond, because it is a very liberal term, and what defines a clerical error, it's a moving target. There's nothing definitive out there that says X, Y, and Z that I'm aware of. So that was a decision why I elected to, yes, let them out of the bid bond. I felt that it did demonstrate a clear error to me on their bid item, and we wouldn't go after the bid bond, and my recommendation to move to the second bidder.
The opposite of that, or my reply to that, would be that there are line items that he is higher than the other bidders. So I'm just not buying it. I mean, there's a defined purpose for a bid bond on any public works project, and I think he's obligated. If he wants to back out, that's my feeling. Then
totally
you forfeit the bid bond. So,
if I can,
do what you want, but I just can't support that.
Since this is, Chad, since this is a Riverside County flood control project, did you contact them about this? They're the ones that are going to pay for it. It's going to come out of our tax bill. I may have a gentleman sitting in the audience here who probably sat on the board and approved this thing when he was sitting on that commission. I sit on that commission now, and so I would imagine that we look at this and say, why wasn't the flood control people contacted? And that's what I just asked, were they apprised of what occurred?
Yes, yeah, we notified because we had to go ask, either scenario, we had to go back and ask for more money because it was beyond the minimum amount that we had budgeted initially. So we had to go back and ask for more money regardless of which bidder it was. But we made them aware of that we got an X number of bids and that we had to reject the first one because of clerical error. And this is now the new amount that we are going to be seeking.
So they're good with that, or did they put out the thing about the bond also?
No, they didn't put any question about our decision.
Okay, all right, thank you.
There are no speaker cards.
All right, so is there a motion or any other questions of staff?
Second it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve item 2G, the acceptance of bids and award a contract for the storm drain project 2019-59.
Please vote. Motion passes with Councilmember Newton voting no.
All right, moving on to item 2H. This was pulled by Councilmember Hoffman.
And this is just a clarification to the director, to Brian Petrie. I know we're talking for the park. Those are the parking pads just for the bathroom area, or does that include anything else? How many bathrooms is up there?
It'll go to the 2 bathrooms that we've put there, and by where it'll also include where the shower area is.
Okay.
So what'll happen? This contract was actually previously approved, and this contract actually allows us to now draw for funding from the county.
Okay.
So we're always a year behind on these projects when they finally come through contractually. So this allows us now to start to draw. So the design now, we'll go forward with the design. We'll bring it back to our subcommittee for review, and then we'll take it out to bid.
So it doesn't include the area around the announcer stand around Clark then?
No, but we may be able to look at it with the funding based on what our estimates are, because it does deal with removal of barriers under the Americans with Disabilities Act.
Okay. So
the way we wrote this particular grant, I think it could include that area, but we'll have to look at the dollars.
Because we have to make that ADA approval.
Yes.
Okay. All right, with that...
and that'll come back to our committee.
Okay, with that, unless anybody else objections, I move to approve.
Been properly moved and seconded to approve item 2H, the block grant money project.
please vote. Motion passes unanimous.
All right, moving on to the last item on number 3, 2P, which is tabling the Norco Youth Advisory Council 2019-2020 term, pulled by Councilmember Hoffman.
I was sad to see this tabled, and after I talked to the city clerk, I understand that you and the mayor and her had a long discussion, and because of the lack of applicants for this, for the youth thing, I hope that we find good for those 3 applicants to get them involved and find out why we have this. We got to help our youth out. They got to understand what's going on. And I just wanted the people to know that this was designed, Robin, when we start this, when you and I came on council, and I know your kids through FFA, they're really involved. So I don't know what the reason was or anything else, or the lack of information. I go to the Interact Club in Eastvale at the Roosevelt. They got 60 kids. We go to ours, we got a dozen at Norco. And so I don't have an answer, but I just pulled this because the audience has to know, the people have to know, this was set up for the kids, for our youth in town to get involved with government, and we need to get them involved. So unless, Robin, I know you and Dana are going to work on something new project in there, unless you have something, Dana, that you want to share.
Go ahead, Dana.
Like we had talked earlier this week, when I noticed that the applications were not coming in at the end of our recruitment, which would have been in August, we had only received 3 prospects for this. I was concerned what had happened. I double-checked to make sure recruitment was done the same it has in the past years. I think what has happened in most schools, these kids are given so many things to choose from and to participate in, so they're trying to look for what is going to look best on their applications. And what I think we need to do with the student youth, as I talked to the mayor, is we need to get this ramped up a little more, less of the just community outreach, but bring them in and have them involved in city council on a regular basis, seeking out peer groups to bring to city council to recognize what they are doing in our city. Also have them maybe mentor and shadow with some of our council members, maybe even meet with some of our assembly members or their staff. It's getting them more involved in government so they have something tangible to put on their application to say, yes, I've worked with city government, this is what I see that works, doesn't work, and bring things back to city council to let you know, I see this is going on in the community, our peers are talking about this at school, or I see this happening in some of the clubs, and can we work together to change, to make things better. So I think that's what we discussed, is we want to revamp, remarket it, and rebrand it to bring it back and make it bigger and better. And this happens with most student-led groups. You have 3 or 4 years of extreme participation. You have a few years where they peter out. I don't want that to happen. I don't want it to be 2 to 3 years down the road. We're only getting a few participants. I want to start this back up next session I want it robust, and I want it to be a great program for our youth in the community, and even get maybe the college involved to have a few mentors come in from the colleges to work with our community or with our students also.
Thank you, Dana. I think we are set on set. This council does not ignore what the young people have to say. We had them up at the government day, and they were participated in a good event. So as long as we look at it that way, we're not trying to shut them down. It's just that we need to revamp the program. Correct? All right. Thank you.
Did you have something?
Yeah, I was really sad to see this happen, and I do think that the mentoring idea is a very good one. That's one of the things, again, at League of Cities they talked about. I'd like to take those 3 and do some kind of an activity with them, link them with one of us, link them with the mayor, link them with the city manager, link them with something, whatever, maybe give them a day, just something, because I think it's really, really important.
So just from my perspective, there's a couple of complex issues that attribute to this. I'm not sure many of you know, but Norco High School is in declining enrollment, and I talked a little bit about that at the town hall meeting. So that's real. And we have a lot of activities and a lot of different things for our youth to do, not only at Norco High School, but in the community. And so our kids are stretched and pulled in a lot of different directions if they make the choice to be involved. I think the other part of this is if you have youth that are really interested in government and community operations, don't know that the way we had originally set up the program was meeting their needs. It really was set up more like a volunteer program and working at community events. And I can tell you from teaching a government class at the high school, the kids do care. When I talk about what are the issues in Norco, they talk about lights and trails and roads. And I got hammered on roads last week when we talked about public stuff. So they're interested and they know and they have robust conversations about that kind of stuff. So we just need to revamp our program, and I think that's what Dana's going to do to get them in on that governmental side and where their interests are. And I think the other part of the program where we were kind of missing the boat, and it goes a little bit to what Kevin says, I don't know one student at Norco High School it's like, I want to be a city manager or public works director when I grow up, but those are really good careers and they're really good things to do. They just don't know about them. And so if we're running this program right, they're going to know about IT and planning and finance and all these cool jobs that are available that they can raise their families and have a nice living. You know, and so it's something that we need to work on, and I think giving Dana the time to work and get that revamped, it will be bigger and better. And I know that when you provide students that is something that's meaningful, you're going to have more applicants than we have spots. So I have faith in what Dana's going to do with the program, and I know we'll get it filled up when it comes back. So with that, I would move to approve item 2P.
Second.
So it's been moved and seconded to table the Norco Youth Advisory for 2019-2020.
Please vote. Motion passes unanimous, and thank you all.
All right, so we're going to move on to item number 4, which are public comments. This is the time when persons in the audience wishing to address the City Council regarding matters not on the agenda may speak. Please complete the speaker card in the back of the room and present it to the City Clerk so that you may be recognized. The Ralph M. Brown Act limits the City Council's ability to respond to comments on non-agendized matters at the time such comments are made. The City Council shall not discuss or take action relative to any general public comments. So our first card, Dana.
First speaker card is Jerry Lund.
Mr. Lundy. Good evening.
Thank you. Good evening, Council. The matter at hand that we're all having a problem with is our manure removal and pickup. There's a few things there that become an issue. One of them is cost. One of them is safety. For years, the last 38 years, I've been having my manure removed by a company because of the volume of horses we have and the amount of shavings that we remove is difficult. So to just do regular bends is so costly that we won't be able to afford to stay in business with the cost that it is at the moment, and it seems to be going up. I think it just went up again. We feel it's really something we need to look into, and I don't know how about exactly to bring the matter up, but we need to get back in there and figure out if what we're doing is wrong or right. But they have shut us down and put us in a real difficult spot. Partita is who we've had remove my material for years, and I do know that there are problems that we have to show a certain amount of manure removal for the amount of horses that we have in this city. And it's an environmental deal, and it's very, very important. Patia Fertilizer is willing to give you all the information that is needed to know where that fertilizer, how it's getting removed from Norco, going to his plant, and then where it goes from there. Because he already at this time deals with the manure that comes from the dairies. So he knows all the legalities of where it has to show where it's got to go for the amount of animals that you have. He's willing to have any of the permits or anything else that is necessary. We also need Western Waste to do what they do for smaller ranches that have just a few horses. They do a great job, and I'm not arguing that fact. But on our bigger ranches, there's just no way we're going to be able to afford to stay in business if we can't find a way to figure this out. He's done a great job. He's safe. They're properly insured. They have the proper drivers. And if we start all doing this ourselves, as it's stated that we need to do it ourselves, it might not be as safe. So I'm worried about that safety issue too, and the cost. I'm sure there's other people that are going to get up and talk about this, but what I did is I put a letter together that will show some of our conversations about this, something you can read through. We can't get it all done tonight. I know we need to bring it up. It also talks about Patia Fertilizer and what he can do to make sure that the manure is being removed properly, going to the right place, and that us as a city can regulate how much waste is leaving here for the amount of horses that we have. So I think that's going to be real important, and he's more than willing to work with council in any way, shape, or form to get that done. And there is a purpose of intent. I believe that'll be the last page on there. Maybe you can look through that, and that'll open up the door for how maybe we can just alter this wording and get us back rolling where we were before. I want to thank you very much for your time, and have a great evening.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Lori Fairchild.
Good evening. My name is Lori Fairchild. I reside here in town, and I'm the sole proprietor of Pepper Glen Farm, located at 3563 Pedley. I'm here concerning a notice to comply and a $300 citation my parents received for having no manure service, no self-haul permit, and no manure storage structure. 1 week after receiving the notice and citation, I posted an open letter to the city on Facebook on 3 different forums. You've probably read that letter by now, and I'm not going to recite all the facts here tonight. I do have copies of that letter, my notice to comply, my $300 citation, and you can review those if you'd like to verify the facts for yourselves. The letter was a bit snarky, but it was done to raise awareness and let people know what is going on. I have submitted my $300 to request an administrative hearing as required by law, and replying to the citation. I do expect the city Norco administrative hearing officer to grant my review and to refund my $300. The current Norco municipal code is very clear. The only company who can haul manure off property in this town is Waste Management. The only other way to remove manure is by a self-haul permit. And that is code number 6.42.140, which states that the Public Works Director shall issue a permit upon determination that the applicant is able to dispose of the manure by transporting said manure to a county-approved sanitary fill or approved facility in a safe and sanitary manner. The permit must be reviewed every year and is non-transferable to any other occupant. Any manure removal process that needs more than one bin pickup per week is absolutely untenable. Scout service and trash trucks create 3 times the traffic compared to a bulk hauler. The waste management bin system produces non-point pollution every single time it rains, as black water pours out from underneath those metal bins right into our sewer drains and the river. That completely negates the city's original intent of this program, which was to improve water quality. Bulk haulers do not compete with waste management. They provide no bins, no carts. It is a specialized pickup service, unlike regular trash or green waste. Partreata Fertilizer comes out with a tractor to load bulk manure onto a dump truck and then disposes it properly. These codes, the manure codes 6.4, have been written for some time and have existed for some time, but they have not been enforced. Enforcement priorities are directed by city management and city council. Since approval of these codes, as I said, there has been no enforcement focus on manure removal. How do I know this? Because the Director of Public Works has not been doing his job inspecting and issuing permits after ensuring that each applicant can personally dispose of their manure in a safe and sanitary manner. If that had actually occurred since the law was written, there would be no one in this town with a permit. We'd fail for the storage of not having a concrete base, or not having non-flammable 3 sides, or failing for a no cover, or we'd fail for not having a safe and sanitary manner to personally transmit and transport by the owner and resident every pile of horse manure that occurred on the property. If that had occurred, we'd all be up in arms, as we are now. Enforcement should start with the council and staff following their own written rules, not harassment of its citizens. Last, I'd like to comment on the city's response to my open letter. I posted that on Friday, November 1st at 1100 hours. At 13:33 hours, a message was left by an unnamed caller who said he was the senior animal control officer calling about my notice. I have a full and complete transcript of that unprofessional message, should you wish to review it. I was threatened with another citation. That was Friday. On Tuesday, November 5th, at 16:58 hours, yes, that is just before 5 p.m., so my visits, personal visits from the city, have occurred at sunrise on a Saturday and sunset. 2 trucks drove in my driveway, and 2 city employees came out. They wanted to discuss my notice and my citation. I asked them why they were there at sunset, and after initially setting a meeting for the following day, I asked specifically what they wanted to discuss. Neither could answer that question. The animal control officer complained about me not calling him as requested on his notice to comply. However, I did point out to him that he did not ever, on his notice to comply, request me to call him. I canceled that meeting we had set, for as I told them, I had requested an administrative review and there was nothing to discuss. I had received a citation, I paid the $300, and I've requested a review. The supervisor then requested to conduct another inspection. And if you had read my letter, you'll note that I received all those citations from my driveway. No inspection has ever been done. This was harassment, pure and simple. If the city employees actually wanted to discuss my concerns that I had not raised with them, they could have contacted me telephonically and set an appointment. That is normal courtesy. they would not have shown up in force in my driveway at sunset the night before a council meeting. And if they had done their job and checked their own records, they would have found that I was in absolute 100% compliance on the 1st of November and yesterday, the 5th of November. There was no reason to show up at sunset, and there was no reason to ask for an inspection, which I declined. The issue of manure removal is vitally important to the financial health of all equine businesses in Norco. We do advertise ourselves as Horsetown USA. They are our lifeblood. You each ran for office to serve the citizens, and yet not one of you contacted me. I'm a longtime resident, a business owner, an employee, employer, and a voter, and yet I have heard nothing from my elected representatives. I ask that you direct that the intimidation and harassment of me stop, that my $300 be returned, and that you fix the manure problem in this town. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
We can't do questions at this time because it's just public comment. I did afford you the courtesy to go beyond the 3 minutes. That's typically allotted for your comments.
Thank you. I'll leave copies of my exhibits.
Perfect. Thank you. Next card.
Richard McGreeson. McGregor.
Thank you. My name is Richard McGregor, 3541 Pedley Avenue, Norco. For you young people, a little bit of history. I was elected to the Norco City Council November 2nd, 1982. Served through December 1st, 1995. Served another year to fill out the term of Hal Clark, who died while he was in office. I'm relatively familiar with the operation of the city and code enforcement. In the early years, we had problems with code enforcement, and we gave very strict instructions to our city manager and staff. The first contact between code enforcement and the individual was to provide a notice of non-compliance and automatically gave them 30 days to conform to the Norco Municipal Code. With the comment, additional time could be requested. The last thing any council I ever served on wanted was citations issued to citizens of Norco in an attitude that reflects a police state type approach. That's exactly what happened here. There was no comment, no warning, no opportunity to correct, just a citation. That's not the Norco I knew. Also, I am absolutely stunned that not one member of the city council took a minute to converse with my daughter to find out what went on. Not one. Not one member of the senior management of the city of Norco cared enough to investigate what went on. What happened was, unannounced, without appointment, 2 individuals arrived to, quote, discuss on a Tuesday night last night. Now, normal business says they should have called for an appointment to set up a meeting. And if you don't want to harass and intimidate, it would just be one individual come and talk. Presumably, the supervisor or manager of that area. Didn't happen. Very disappointed in the city, its performance, its management technique, and particularly this council for allowing this to happen. I am happy to notice, though, that we're rich enough to afford to send our money to that impoverished community in Newport Beach so that they can process all our citations. It's good to know that we're supporting them. Perhaps they will return the favor by increasing the toll on 91 and 241. Thank you, good night. I'd rather not be here, but I hope you do something. I'll be waiting to see. And I hope the people in the audience remember, in the voting booth, the action of this council in investigating this action. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker, Greg Bowen.
How you guys doing? This is on a lighter note. I'd like to thank the Sheriff Department for their extra patrols out on the street. The guys they have doing it are really doing a good job. I sit out with Bowen and a few other people at Circle K watching the guy go to work, and I really appreciate it. And he sits on the side streets watching the speeders come up, and I really appreciate that. I can't tell you how many times we've almost got hit, and it's calmed down a lot. But I am noticing on 8th Street between California and Crestview, it's a racetrack. And I've sat out there with a few people that lived there and watched it and told them that I would come up and say something about it. And just with my own eyes, watching them just fly up and down there. And every time I go over and talk to them, somebody's truck's getting ripped off. But you guys are doing an awesome job. Thank you guys very much. And that's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Last speaker, Nina Miller.
Good evening. I had one code enforcement issue, and I was given the 30 days notice, and I worked with Kevin and I worked with you folks to solve the problem really easily. But the problem of the horse manure, I've been here since 1991. I had as many as 19 or 20 horses on my property legally, and I fought Western Waste or USA Waste or whatever they're called. They are not safe. They are dangerous for my property. They have broken my equipment. They have kamikazed on through my pasture to where they pick up the manure. They've damn near run me down on the street when I've been walking horses and working my horses on my trails. So no, I don't want them on my property. I've had to run them off. And the bins are not safe. I had a horse run up the ramp that they used, you know, when you put the wheelbarrows up to put the manure in. The horse went up the ramp and could have jumped into the bin. Fortunately, she jumped off the side. They've broken the ramps. So I would way rather do the, whatever you call the big bin maneuver, you know, just have somebody come once a month and take it away. And I think I should have that right. I don't think it should be a monopoly. I don't think my city should tell me who I have to use to do a job, as long as we can say it's safe. And I was doing the annual little notices until you stopped giving them to me, and I wrote them out. Here's who's picking it up, here's where they're taking it, here's where it's safe, you guys were okay with it, and all of a sudden you're not. So I don't understand that, and I don't understand what happened to you can't have a monopoly. And the only other meeting I've ever been to in the time I've lived here since 1991 was the last time this issue came up. Otherwise, I get out of your way and I let you do your job. And Hal Clark lived 2 doors down from me, so I at least always had an ear. So I really implore you guys to re-look at this thing, look at the businesses, look at what it costs. If I can't afford this, I sell all my horses and I move to Tennessee. Or someplace with high internet, which one of my roommates needs, okay? So I really thank you for the time. Also, I really don't want any more of your folks knocking on my door with pictures of my property yelling at me, because that was really offensive. But that had to do with construction. That didn't have to do with the manure. Okay, thank you, and good night.
Thank you.
We had one more speaker, Megan Gastel.
Hi, I'm Megan Gastel. I own 2817 Valley View. I own boarding stables as well. When I took over the property, I came and got a self-haul permit. I told the lady who I'd be using to haul my manure. She told me it was completely acceptable to hire a company to come remove my manure. I've been using him weekly. I keep all of my receipts. I again have bulk removal. About a month, I'm spending $240 to have it properly taken out safely, to be turned into fertilizer, not just dumped, to switch to waste management, which I did for the first 2 months until they took my bins. I came to City Hall, asked asked where my bins were. They didn't know. 2 weeks went by. My manure kept building up. And I asked for an alternative. That's when I got my self-haul permit. That's when I learned about all this. And she suggested, Partita herself, that I use him. It has been a fantastic service. My place is always clean. My stalls are cleaned 7 days a week, twice a day. I am very particular that it is clean and there is no manure. Waste management did not give that to me. And not only that, the cost of what it would be to remove the amount of manure I have, I'm going to be up in the thousands. There's no way. I will shut down. I will become a stay-at-home mom and be done. You guys are talking about the millennials that you want to keep this stuff going. That's me. It's not going to happen if I go to waste management. It's not going to happen. I also have toddlers. I cannot self-haul. I'm running a business. I would have to remove my manure twice every 5 days. There's no way I can do it. You're going to shut down businesses in Norco if you don't look at this again. Thank you.
Thank you.
There are no more comments?
All right. Thank you. So that's going to conclude item number 4, public comments. Please know that your council will definitely be looking into this and following up on this. And then just as a general note, for me personally, the best way to contact council members by phone or email. So just as a matter of information. So number 5, discussion items and action items.
Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Could I just interrupt 1 second?
Absolutely.
That maybe you could mention to the audience that our last item on the agenda is council communications, where I'm sure one of us may want to make a comment to some of the speakers' comments.
Excellent. So if you do want to stay till the end of the meeting, that's where the council members can ask to agendize specific items or ask staff to follow up on some stuff. Okay? Yeah, we can't make comments, but we can ask to agendize. So we can't comment. All right, so discussion and action items, number 5. This is the way that this goes. We're going to have the order of presentation. So it's staff reports and presentations, council questions of staff, public speakers in favor, against, or neutral to the item, council discussion, and then council action. So our first item, 5A, is to authorize the issuance of Norco Financing Authority Enterprise Revenue and Refunding Bonds Series 2019A. And with that, we'll have Gina.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, Chairman, and members of the City Council and Norco Financing Authority. Staff is requesting the authorization of the issuance of the Norco Financing Authority Enterprise Revenue Refunding Bonds, Series 2019A, for debt service savings and to finance the acquisition and construction of certain improvements to the city's water system and sewer system. Tonight we have our financing team here. We have, first I want to say Anna Sarabian couldn't make it this evening. She's on a flight back. Her colleague, Jim Fabian, from Fieldman Roll-Up & Associates, will be providing a presentation. I'd also like to mention that Eric McKean, our underwriter, is here from Stiefel. Also, Cyrus Tarabi from Stradling. He's been our bond counsel and has been wonderful. It's been wonderful to work with him on this project. And also Chelsea Redmond from Fieldman, who's been handling a lot of the daily items. So I'd like to ask Jim Fabian to come up to present.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. It's my pleasure to be here tonight in Anna's place. I've had the pleasure of working with the city off and on in Anna's absence on different matters over the last couple of years, so it's a pleasure to be here. Tonight we have a short presentation we'd like to walk through to talk about the issuance of the 2019 Series A Enterprise Revenue Refunding Bonds. Or clicker. There we go. Okay, so tonight we're going to be, this is really a two-part process that we're going to be speaking about. First, we have a refunding of your 2009 enterprise bonds that were issued in the amount of $31.23. Those bonds became callable on October 1st of 2019, and so we're going to be refunding those bonds to provide savings to the city. In addition to that, we're going to be issuing bonds to finance acquisition of construction of improvements for both the water system and the sewer system. This is by combining the refunding with the new money, we do get economies of scale of spreading the fixed cost over a larger base, which is beneficial to the city. The 2019 bonds will be secured by installment payments that are payable solely from the net revenues of both the city's water and sewer system. No general fund obligation is involved in this. The way that we're doing the refunding is we're keeping the term of the debt the same. So the existing debt matures on October 1st of 2039. The refunding bonds will also mature on that same date of October 1st, 2039. In the upper right, the key statistics that are important to the council and the city are the total gross savings that are produced by doing the refunding. We have approximately $12.9 million of gross savings. When you factor in the time value of money, that amount is roughly $9 million, which is 28.99% in terms of percentage from a net present value savings. Typically, if it's 5% or more, your policies and GFOA best practices say look at refunding the debt. So this is well over that threshold and provides you with great overall savings. On the bottom chart, you can see there that we have the new money portion in orange, and then the refunding in green, and you can see that what we're doing is layering the new money debt on top of the refunded debt, and we have combined debt for all the way out to 2040. After the refunding bonds go away, you just have the new money debt shown on the far right there in the orange going out to 2050. That would be a 30-year borrowing for the new money that will generate approximately $14 million for the projects that have been identified. So tonight, in your packet, you have a resolution. That resolution authorizes all the actions required for the issuance of the bonds. The amount is a not to exceed $45 million. That is a not to exceed amount. We don't anticipate having a bond issue of that size. We think it's going to be more like $36 million. That takes into account premium, the use of the existing reserve fund that will be used to buy down the debt. And we are looking to get a rating from Standard & Poor's. That'll be on November the 15th. We actually have a rating call with Standard & Poor's tomorrow morning. The negotiated sale of the bonds with Stifel Nicholas, your underwriter, will happen on December the 4th, and then the closing of the bonds will happen on December 18th. At that time, the 2009 bonds will be called and defeased and will go away, and then you'll just have the debt service on the new 2019 bonds from that point on. Happy to answer any questions that you might have regarding the refunding and new money issue in front of you this evening.
Does council have any questions?
I'll take a shot at it.
Okay.
Could you go back to your graph that was 2 slides back?
Yes, sir.
I don't have your expertise on this, so bear with me. Where we're looking at the net savings, our gross savings 12 million, then our net savings 9. And I don't know if this is a parallel or not. Do our current water rates, would they be affected by this bond issue as far as being raised or lowered?
Very good question. So your existing rate structure factors in the existing 2009 debt. Your rate structure also factors in this new authorization for the $14 million. By refunding the 2009 debt, it provides you financial flexibility to have more opportunity to do pay-go, look at other different options for both the water and the sewer fund. It doesn't translate into reduction of rates, but it does provide you with flexibility to make decisions about the savings that's being provided. Now, remember, you are saving money, but you are also adding money by the issuance of the $14 million. So the net effect is, as you can see there, that the actual debt service does go up because you have the new money that will be used to pay for the projects that have been identified. But if you didn't refund, it would be a larger increase in the debt service that you have.
Okay. Then on the refunding, knowing rates are so low right now, do these future bonds, do they have a refunding schedule where you can, like 10 years down the road, if rates, I'd be scared if rates are lower. I think we'd be in a different dynamic, but can they be refunded in a certain time
Another good
period?
question. So the way that your 2009 bonds were structured, you had a 10/1/2019 call date, so a 10-year par call at par or 100%. The 2019 bonds will be callable in 10 years at 100% too. So that's typical in a bond issue, that you have a lockout, for lack of a better word, for that first 10 years. And then as you go down the yield curve over time, you have that opportunity in the future to refund the debt. So Chelsea, when she's up here in 10 years, she'll be making the case that you should refund those 2019 bonds in 2029.
You know, I guess I should ask you then, like on all my mutual funds, I cannot understand yield curves, how they go up or down and how we get slammed, but that's not your thing. That's just my...
Well, think of it, the yield curve goes like this.
Right.
So, you know, as your closer maturities are lower, your longer maturities are higher. No different here in municipal bonds. I mean, the great thing about bonds is they're tax-exempt income, the interest on them. For residents of California, you get the double benefit of the state deduction and the federal deduction on the interest rate on the bonds.
But what happens when the yield goes down?
Well, that if there is a opportunity, as you mentioned, rates are at or near historic lows. So this is a great time to lock in the savings that we're going to accomplish by refunding the 2009 bonds. It's also a great opportunity to lock in funding for $14 million of needed projects for both of the systems. And, you know, we're looking at, you know, borrowing costs under 3%. So, you know, overall, it's a great time. Now, in the future, will rates be lower? Hard to imagine they're going to be any lower than they are right now in 2019 and 2020. But the thing about when you go out 10 years and you come up to that next call date, you only have 20 years left on the bonds. And so you probably will have another opportunity at that point in time to look at refunding that debt.
Thank you so much.
You bet.
Council have any other questions?
I guess I should have studied harder than Economics 101. And I'm looking at the chart. And so we're extending this out 10 years, correct, to get the $14 million, is what you're saying?
You're issuing new money debt that's 30 years.
New money, okay. So originally this was a 30-year or a 20-year?
Your 2009 were 30-year bonds as well, to 2039.
Okay. So this is actually going out to 40 years with the additional 10 years. I'm just trying to understand.
No, that's not the case.
Okay.
So you're not extending the term of the 2009 bonds. They go away in 2039. Your new money is 30 years, just like your 09 bonds, and those will mature in 2049.
Okay, so this is, okay. Now
right. And think about that. You know, the reason you do a 30-year debt is these improvements have intergenerational equity that will last 50 years. And so you want to spread the cost not only to the current users, but the future users of the systems.
Okay, so, and that's at the lower interest rate anyway, so, because the interest rates are locked in, correct?
The interest rates are locked in as of the date that the bonds are sold, which will be in December.
Okay. That's got my economics lesson today, so.
Any other questions?
Oh, but he is. He is.
All right, so at this time, we'll go ahead and see if there are any public speakers.
There are no speaker cards on this item.
Okay, then it will come back to council for discussion. It's been properly moved and seconded to approve item 5A to refund our 2019 bonds.
Please vote. Motion passes unanimous.
I do want to admit, Madam Mayor, that this was a lot easier to follow than the staff report in the book.
Yeah,
Thank you.
The report is crazy long.
That was very nicey. Thank you.
All right, so the next one is 5B, supporting the proposed exchange of the Caltrans park and ride lot with an equivalent city-owned lot. Roger, you're up.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council. For several years, the city and Caltrans have been negotiating a land exchange that would result in the city acquiring our existing park and ride lot on Old Hamner Road. In exchange, Caltrans would receive the city-owned lot north of the community center. The result would be a new park and ride lot with greater visibility, greater safety, easier access for commuters, and a direct connection to public transit. Now, from Caltrans' position, safety and convenience for commuters is the only criteria they look at for these exchanges. From the city's perspective, acquisition of the existing park and ride lot opens opportunities for economic development north of 6th Street. Now, there's still some items that need to be negotiated with Caltrans, but passage of this resolution would move us one step closer to closing this transaction that has been in the pipeline for several years now. I'd be happy to respond to any questions you may have.
Council have any questions?
I have one.
Okay.
Good report, Roger. And I certainly support this. My question is the recommendation of the Parks and Rec Commission to council on item number 1, should there ever be a future purchase of the original park and ride, those funds from the purchase be placed in a park development fund. What is the reasoning for that request, that the funding goes to a park development fund and not somewhere else?
So, good question, and
I can answer if you want.
Then I'll defer to the
At the time of the original parking lot that we have, that land was purchased with park development funds. So the commission felt that if we're going to exchange the land, and should that land ever be sold, that money should be placed back into the park development fund. And if any development was go, then that could be used for other parks within the city or improvements.
What was the original purchase price with park funds?
I think it was a really good deal, and I think we were just at about $87,000.
So I wouldn't have any objection if we sold that to repay the 87 to make you whole. Is it?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I would say the commission did a really good job of negotiations and trying and getting that property at the time at such a good price. So, and actually, we pieced the properties together. It was part of the Britain Land Trust owned that, and then we actually received some of that land through tax forfeiture through the county. So the total allocation was just under $90,000 for the whole parcels that are identified here in the report.
What would you think the that land's worth today in a purchase or a sale to a developer?
Well, it appraised at 1.3, almost 1.38 million is what it appraised today for. Okay. And the property that Caltrans has appraised for under that. So the problem with this property, because of its linear structure, and at the time when we looked at it from the commission standpoint, it's not developable because of the setbacks, but it made opportunity for us for overflow parking, for the community center, etc. So it really, there's not a lot you could do with it without, you know, changing Hamner or something, and that just wasn't going to happen. So, but it made sense for at the time for what we were, our intent of use for that.
Okay. I don't know if I want to give you $1 million to spend. That's all right.
Just keep them in their thoughts.
Okay. I mean, we're not married to that condition or the future councils, right?
Not even a part of the resolution.
Okay. It's a recommendation.
Wait, that's only. If someday, if anything was to happen, we don't know what the what if is.
Okay. If Corinne's all right with it, then I'm okay with it.
Other questions of staff?
Just a comment. We've been working on this since the late 90s. And actually, Harry Britton was on the commission, as you know, and voted against purchasing it for like $6,000 and bought it the next day. So he made a profit of like $80,000.
If he only knew what it really would have been worth.
Gee, many Christmas, yeah. But this is so, my God, we were doing this when I was on Park and Rec Commission, like my first 3 years. Been a long time. Good job, Brian. Very timely. We should have put Bill on it 2 weeks. That's all.
Okay.
I just have one thing on as jovial as those. Brian, this, or Roger, or even Chad, when the county comes through transportation and widens Hamner out to Detroit to 6 lanes, how much is this going to impact us in that area? We can't go east because of the utility lines. So we go west, correct? Or was it stay a 4-lane there?
No, it will be 6 lanes all the way through to 6th Street, going south. It will impact the park and ride, existing park and ride that's there to the west, in that, because the bridge basically sweeps to the west a little bit, then comes back to the alignment through Detroit, so it will actually likely impact the current monument sign. So part of the overall county project is looking at how that can be replaced and placed in a new location in the same general area. It might be smaller than it originally is now, and that's one of the issues that we still need to work out with the swap, is some easement rights so we can relocate and construct a new monument sign in the same location, because that technically all that area is going to be now owned by is it RCTC or Caltrans. So we want to make sure in this discussion when we do this transfer is that we, one, protect the current trail that goes through portion of that park and ride as an easement, and also ability to move the current monument sign that would likely get, it would pretty much going right through it. It would have to get demolished and then redone, basically pushing it farther in through some retaining walls, etc. So we are very cognizant of trying to protect that, the ability to have a monument sign at that same location. So we've got to make sure we have those agreements in place, and that's a meeting Roger's already have scheduled to have those discussions.
Okay, thank you. I was just concerned about that when he talked about the 6 lanes. Thank you.
Just to add, the commission's, just to reiterate, one of their strong points was the trail. If that land is going to be dedicated, that there is an easement, that trail be kept. If the maintenance responsibility, once a maintenance agreement is negotiated, falls on the city, that's fine, but they do not want to lose that trail.
Okay, so I have a question, I guess, for the city attorney, because you said it wasn't in the resolution, but the second to the last whereas does have that Parks and Recreation considered the issue and recommends the exchange site subject to certain conditions. So are we married to those conditions by that vocabulary in the resolution or no? Because it doesn't list the conditions specifically in the resolution, but it does reference them.
One, it's a resolution, so it's not binding in that sense. That you can change your resolution tomorrow, but it doesn't call out specifically what those conditions are.
Okay.
So no.
The other thing is the sale of the current Caltrans property, which we don't even know if that'll ever happen. But if that was to happen, that wouldn't be part of the conditions if we've already swapped the land, because we own that land then.
Okay.
Yeah, but you're not tying future council's hands.
Any other questions of staff?
We have no speaker cards on this item.
Okay, so been properly moved and seconded to approve the exchange of the Caltrans park and ride for the equivalent city-owned lot.
Please vote. Motion passes unanimous.
All right, we are going to move on to item number 6. Which is a public hearing. Public hearings will go in the following order: staff report and presentation, council questions of staff. I'll open the public hearing, close the public hearing, we'll have council discussion, and then council action. So today it's ordinance number 1053, first reading, which is our fire code. And today we have Sandy here to give the report.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and council members. I'm very excited to be here today to present this to you. Before you tonight is an ordinance for the adoption of the 2019 California Fire Code. Adoption of the most current fire code is important to the health, safety, and welfare of our community. And these amendments to the code are necessary to assure the operational needs and safety of fire department personnel responding to emergency incidents within our city. The fire code is reviewed, amended, and adopted by the California Building Standards Commission on a 3-year cycle, and local jurisdictions are required to adopt the fire code by ordinance with any desired local amendments on that same 3-year cycle. The ordinance this year is substantially the same as the current municipal code with just a few changes. First, section 308.1.6.3 is carried over from the previous ordinance, but it has been modified to completely prohibit the use of sky lanterns and similar devices. In previous adoptions, we have allowed them to be used if tethered, but there really is no way to enforce this. Sky lanterns are a serious fire risk, and multiple fires have been reported to be linked to the use of these devices. The other change is a modification of section 903.2 to allow an exemption for fire sprinklers in certain agricultural buildings, greenhouses, and shade structures. The 2019 California Fire Code will become effective statewide on January 1st, 2020, and the city must complete its adoption process 30 days prior to this date. I'm here to address any questions you have at this time.
All right, does council have any questions? Kevin?
So as John pointed out to me and that I noticed in our climactic conditions,
yes,
we live in a dangerous area.
We do.
And just so we're clear, the CPUC refused to allow any of this into their high transmission lines going through the foliage. But you did a very good job of telling us that things catch on fire here.
They do.
So if somehow we can conflagration, so it's like a really bad fire. So I don't know what we do with this. I'm going to support this obviously, but I don't know how we get this through the bureaucracy to let them know that we're afraid.
Right.
All right. Thank you. That's all I have. I'm going to support this. It's a great job.
Thank you.
question on sprinklers.
Yes.
For like ag buildings and that. What are we looking at for square footage, where it would be required or not required?
So the City of Norco has an amendment to the code that requires fire sprinklers in all buildings 2,500 square feet or more.
Okay.
But there was an exemption in a previous code adoption that allowed for example, a greenhouse more than 5,000 square feet. So the greenhouse, if it was a 2,500 square foot greenhouse, they did not have to install sprinklers. The limit was 5,000. But we've modified the amendment to, we've modified the code to not necessarily require it in a greenhouse that's 5,000 square feet, even in that particular case. And for example, a shade structure, which could be a shade structure for horses, like an arena that's just a covered arena that's non-combustible and there's really nothing under it but dirt and horses riding around. You wouldn't be required, regardless of the square footage of that, to install sprinklers. Where in the previous code we had that 2,500 square foot number. We've exempted some of the agricultural style buildings in this new adoption.
Just say, for example, like Merino Arena, that's 85, 86,000 square feet, non-combustible, but you have people underneath it also. It wasn't required at the time, would it? If we were to build new, would we have to?
Yes, I would say in that situation probably, because one of the conditions that we place for these shade structures, horse arenas, is that they don't conduct other activities such as assembly uses below them.
Okay. I'm just kind of thinking of a conversation I had with the mayor about like the 4-H barns. And if those were over 2,500 square feet, I mean, it's primarily animals, but there are people, with that, even though it was non-combustible, type 2 something, would sprinklers be required there also?
In enclosed structures, a barn, yes, typically
Say it's not enclosed. Say it's a roof only.
So if it's a roof only, then it's more like a shade structure.
Right.
So we don't require sprinklers in those typically.
Okay. Even though people would be assembling.
Assembling in a horse stall?
Under the barn for like
under
a sail.
Barn roof, like a sail.
It's hard for me to say specifically in that situation.
I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I'm trying to think of something further down the road on it.
I get it.
I'm not trying to nail you on that. I'm just trying to look at that. Okay. What's that, Chad?
It's fair, it's fair.
She's much nicer to deal with than Scott Lane, okay?
You know what? John just came up with a very good idea, and I think it's an excellent idea. We just sent a letter to Hope Chrisman, and I think that we should send at least this page, but this is what our code is. This is what CAL FIRE wrote, and I think we need to let Hope, our CPUC representative, know about this. So maybe we send. Have we sent that letter already?
It goes out tomorrow, yeah.
Could we add this to it and add some language and just say, hey, this is our code? And maybe just pull out this part. I love the word conflagration. I mean, it's like, that means we're going to hell. I mean, what do you think, Cal? I don't know if you guys know, but we're sending a letter after the Hope Chrisman that the mayor is signing, where we're trying to get them to get that letter, and I think that this language can be very powerful. Because it's going to every single person. Maybe pull this language out and put it at the end or something. I don't know.
Or I mean,
copy of the ordinance.
Just a copy of the ordinance and direct them to read the first section.
Yeah, put it in yellow. So maybe, do you mind if we rewrite that?
An attachment.
Okay. And refer to it, though, just a little bit maybe at the end. And highlight and put in 36 font. Conflagration.
And flames?
Yeah. CAL FIRE said conflagration. I'm actually serious about it.
All right. Any other questions? All right, so we are in a public hearing for this matter, so I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing. Are there any cards on this item?
There are no speaker cards on this item.
I'm going to close the public hearing, bring it back to council for discussion and action. It's been
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Norco, California, replacing Title 15, Chapter 15.09 of the Norco Municipal Code, Code Amendment 2019-06.
It's been properly moved and seconded to approve Ordinance 1053.
Please vote. Motion passes unanimous.
All right, so we are going to move on to item number 7, City Council, City Manager, and Staff Communications. So we will start with John. I'm going to go that way today. Kevin?
Yeah, very quickly. One, I was visiting Park Ridge today, Park Ridge Elementary School, and I know it's not in our area, but to the east is an area that is huge tumbleweeds, and I'm really concerned about fire danger because one of the problems is down in the hills down where the trees are farther east. There's quite a large homeless population there, and a fire could go through there really quickly. The tumbleweeds are literally as high as the fence that's there, and I've also asked the district to maybe check those fences. So we're on Corona Avenue, where on the east side of Park Ridge Elementary, I believe it might be county land, I'm not sure. It might be I don't know who it is, but I think it's really dangerous. I mean, literally the tumbleweeds are as high as the fence. And as I said, I've also asked the school district, I think they need to get rid of that fence because they do have problems with people coming over it. So that's not your purview, but maybe if you could look into that. And then I'd like to send a letter. He's too busy, but Rick Robinson, as you probably know, in Norco High School was declared Coach of the Decade for the state of California, and I would love to send a letter that we could all sign. He's too busy to bring in here. We could try, but I'd like to send a letter to him. Brian, the trees behind the community center, I know you're aware of this, but they're really destroying. They're big eucalyptus trees. I think we're going to have to do something about those. What do you think? I know you hate to, but that wall is a WPA wall. It would be nice. And then the tree we planted I sent you a note. Is it dead?
No, it's a deciduous tree, so it's
okay.
But it's fine. We checked it out.
Everybody said, "Look at Norco. They planted a dead tree, and then they honor it." So, and then I'm sure other people I would like to agendize a discussion on manure. I think that we need to look at that, if possible. Do I need to get a vote on that?
Is that a motion?
Yeah. That's a motion.
Is there a second?
Yeah. As soon as I...
Further discussion on that?
Yeah, no, there's not.
I just
I have concerns as well and move on, but you can't discuss the topic.
I don't want to discuss it. I want to add to it. If he wants to agendize that,
yeah,
I don't know if I can. I personally like to agendize that, but in the meantime, request that we suspend any code enforcement action for at least 60 to 90 days on any situation dealing with self-haul. I don't know if we can agendize that prior to agendizing it.
Yeah, and that probably isn't an appropriate action for here tonight, but I think that Andy and I and Steve are well aware of the concerns, and so.
The problem, maybe to tag team up on what you're saying, is because I own a large ranch, and if their manure is really building up, we are going to have a fire. We're going to have fire danger.
But we already had one of those.
So I think the sooner we can look at this, the better.
Well, and I agree. I'm not asking for a permit. I'm just...
Okay, so it's, there's a motion and a
If the
second.
question is, can you agendize the second half for the next meeting as well?
Yeah.
The request?
Yes.
Okay, so I've just amended my motion.
Okay, just do it,
You can do that.
And then to maybe, well, we can talk about that when we
So that
agendize
gives us
it.
only
That's
2
fine.
weeks to get
That's
out
fine.
the citation.
Okay, so the motion on the floor, gentlemen, is to agendize the manure discussion and agendize code enforcement.
A moratorium on
A moratorium on code enforcement for manure.
So we complete it, yeah.
No, just on self.
Just on self-haul.
Just on self-haul.
Go ahead, Andy.
Make some
Clarify.
Yeah.
Ken?
I think the discussion regarding this issue is going to take some discussion before we're able to bring it to the City Council. This is an item I believe it should include waste management. The moratorium part I get, we can bring that to the City Council and have that issue, if that's the desire of the City Council, addressed at the next City Council meeting, and would deal with that, which seems to be the immediate concern. However, the other issue is a broader issue that I think would need to flush out before bringing an agenda.
Yeah, because it's actually a huge issue. Where are they taking it? Are we getting credit for it? There's a whole bunch of things we're going to have to discuss.
And without doing any discussion, because it's not on the agenda, I agree with Andy, is that we need to set up an ad hoc committee with this to include council, staff, along with waste management, and along with perhaps 2 residents that currently have self-haul permits, so that we can address this thing properly. Because, as you know, this ordinance was developed 2008.
No, actually, it was like 2000. There was no code enforcement in 2010. There was none.
But
it was about 2013.
To get rid of the manure was around 2010, 2000. It's in the latter half. So that's when the original ordinance. So, like anything, things get tweaked because things change.
I'm just nervous about it.
The self-haul permit, though, has been around forever, for more than 20 years.
Yeah, forever.
I just get nervous because, just from my point of view, the committee that did this, and it was a huge mistake. And I know you guys aren't going to agree, but the truth of the matter is we're just going to watch all these horses go out of Norco. And so I'm very leery now of having an ad hoc committee to discuss this. I think we need to man up and discuss it up here.
So we have a motion.
Yeah.
Not discussing anything? Yeah.
Let's see if that will work.
2012, right after
Waste management. Linda Dixon and myself and staff, we had an ad hoc committee, and one of the things that we did regarding waste management is we took ownership of the manure. It's our manure on whatever we want to do with it. So I'm kind of curious at this point. I kind of like the idea that we should deal with it, but why involve waste management? I think this is, I like Ted's idea, but I think I also like your comment that it's up to us to deal with it. But just as a note, in that ad hoc committee, we took ownership of the manure, and it's written that way in Waste Management's contract. I'm 100% positive on that.
Yeah, I think you're correct as far as ownership of manure is concerned.
Right. If we wanted to sell it, if we want whatever we wanted to do with it.
Right. That is correct.
Okay.
We can decide where to take the manure to.
Right.
However, we have exclusive franchise with waste management to collect manure from the city, except those that self-haul. Okay. That's the issue we have to address.
So one other thing I'd like you to research, if we could. Steve, I don't know, maybe you can help me with this, because I'm going to say earlier 2000s, somewhere in the earlier 2000s. I remember being on Planning Commission, and we also had an ad hoc committee to deal with Manure and the Scout Service, okay? And there was a lot of citizen participation in that. I think you were on Parks and Rec. I don't think you were on council yet.
Yeah, it was, Hal Clark was alive.
Right, right. And we made all these recommendations on the Scout Service that we shouldn't be charged for it. It was included in the waste management fees, blah, 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 blah. And it went, we worked real hard on it and went absolutely nowhere. I don't know if we have records on that.
Well, the thing is that what ultimately happened was they said, you know what, Waste Management, you signed the contract. Sorry, the Scout Service we don't pay for it. And so what's happened is we're just driving literally thousands of horses out of the city. So I'm concerned about that.
I just can't remember the date, but I'm thinking somewhere no later than mid-2000s or earlier 2000s.
Yeah, Hal was still alive.
Yeah.
I'll research.
Could you?
And then I have one last question. I just want to know, did anybody, it's a question.
Are we going to vote on the motion on the floor, or are we just going to skip over
Then I'll ask my question.
Okay. I'll restate the motion. It's to agendize
What's that herding
a manure.
cat stuff?
Oh my gosh, you guys are killing me tonight. Manure discussion, and then agendize a moratorium on code enforcement of the self-haul permits.
Councilmember Newton?
Yes.
Councilmember Bash?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoffman?
Yes.
Mayor Grummeyer?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimous.
Okay, Kevin, you can finish.
My final question is, did anybody get a direct? I never got anything from anybody other than what Ted said, and I had every intention to come here. Did anybody get an email or a phone call about this? I got nothing.
I received phone calls.
I didn't get anything.
I received 2.
Okay.
And I talked to those people directly.
Maybe we can put something out there that the best way to contact council is to call us or email us?
It's not through social media?
Yeah. Because I don't look at any of those corny sites. I don't look at them. That's all. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm very sorry.
So, Councilman Newton.
2 things, and one was kind of to back up what Kevin just said, that maybe we just throw a little reminder out there if you want to get a hold of a city staff member or a council member, don't do it through social media, and maybe just call or send an email. So my other thing, and it's just trying to think maybe like some long-range planning after the bridge presentation, that somewhere down the road, we're gonna have once that bridge is completed, we're gonna have a traffic impact, obviously, at 6th and Hamner. And I know we've had discussion on like a second left turn lane and all of that. But maybe the powers that be, including public safety, Detroit, there's going to be a light at Detroit, and Detroit, I think that cut through traffic, once that bridge is finished, is just going to be too much to handle. And that it's too much today. I can't even imagine what it's going to be like in a couple, 3 years. That maybe we need to start planning on how can we eliminate that or reduce that cut through traffic, and especially the impact from that bridge. And it's not, I'm just throwing it out there that maybe this should be a future long-range discussion. I can see the smoke coming out of your ears, so don't relax. You don't need an answer tonight. Thank you, Mayor.
Dana.
No comments tonight, thanks.
Matt. Chad.
First and foremost, I appreciate the very healthy and candid discussion today and all the action items, but I most appreciate the support in allowing us to continue to move forward on many of these much-needed projects. So I feel free to keep grilling us. If we don't have the answers, then we shouldn't move forward on these things, but I welcome the healthy discussion. I appreciate it. Did want to report that we have finished another, that will come to you for a notice of completion, a project where we've done the paving on Vine and the two adjacent cul-de-sacs that are part of that street. So I know the neighborhood is very happy with improvements, but they're also now calling me concerned about the speeding. So it's a double-edged sword, but they're very excited over the roadway, but now they say it's a raceway. So for the sheriff, you get to stay out there a little bit longer. But again, another project that's off the table, which is great. And again, I just want to appreciate and tell you thank you for your support.
Steve. Brian.
See everybody at Marching Through History and on Monday at Veterans Day.
Nina.
Yes, I'm excited to announce that we've received the Government Finance Officers Association Award again for the 16th year. And I'd like to just huge shout out to staff. Lizette Free, our accounting manager, has been here, I think, 2 years. And Melinda Van, our senior accountant, have absolutely done an amazing job with all the GASBs that we have to deal with. And also, just a little side note, while that's going on in the background, we're also managing, working with Public Works with a lot of expenditures that are coming in. And that also has taken quite a bit of our time. But this year, you're going to see the financial statements, a little sooner than we did last year. And we're just really excited about it. And this achievement, even though it seems to happen every year, it still is, it's a big deal. So I just want to thank the team.
Sandy.
Nothing more, thank you.
Okay. Annette. Ted.
You forgot.
Berwin. He's been so quiet this evening.
Got nothing to say. I gotta have him here. I didn't have the cutout. I have a couple of things, and Councilman Newton brought this up. When Brian was talking about his the plans for the cut to make sure we retain the horse trail across, which is currently on Taft. I believe that's where it runs.
What I'm referring to is the trail that actually comes across the street at Alhambra and goes north and southbound within that parking lot area, which will be our future connection through the community center park.
Okay, but we do have, because of the future expansion of the 6 lanes of Hamner Avenue, and there is a horse trail crossing at Taft, correct? No, Bill's telling me no. There's a bicycle trail there.
Well, it dead ends. The horse trail dead ends at Taft. It goes no further.
It parallels 6. So there's no place. Anyway, so then that's mute on. I was thinking maybe we ought to think about future things, putting a tunnel underneath there, like they did at Silver Lakes and that. But that's some far off idea, Chad, for you, nature. A couple of things real quick. I want to compliment the mayor for allowing 2 of our speakers to go over time. I think it was a very important issue, and I'm glad you didn't hold them to the 3 minutes. The other thing is our NART team last night, we got to familiarization and work with the Riverside County Animal Control. Based upon our MOU, they came out to the Station 47, got familiar with what we are and what we do. So I think it's a good marriage so far, until probably we screw it up, and then we'll see from there. But I really appreciate the chance to work together with them. So thank you, and that's it for me.
Andy? So the only announcement I have is unload and City of Norco and Corona-Norco Unified School District will be presenting another town hall. It will be next Thursday at Norco High School. We're actually going to run 2 meetings. Both meetings will be on vaping, which is a huge problem at the high school right now, probably our #1 problem at the high school. So we'll have one meeting for the students in the Performing Arts Center, and then we'll be meeting with parents in the library so we can inform both groups of the dangers and what to look for and all of that stuff. So again, completely free event. There'll be light refreshments. And again, that will be next Thursday at Norco High School. So with that, I will declare this meeting adjourned.